Hello, I'm Lisa Burkhardt Worley, along with Lane Jordan Burday, and we want to welcome you to Pop Talk, the show where you never know what topics might pop up. With all the anti-Semitism going on in the world, it is important that we help each other and try to bridge the gap by understanding each other's respective beliefs. That's what our guest on this show is doing, and Lane has the introduction.
Thank you, Lisa. Our guest today is Larry Brook. He is the editor and publisher of Southern Jewish Life, a monthly magazine that covers 4 states: Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and the Florida Panhandle. Larry has been involved in interfaith dialogue since high school and has covered the story of Christian Zionism for decades. Because of his interest in interfaith dialogue, Larry launched a new magazine called Israel in Sight for Christian supporters of Israel. So, Larry, welcome to Pop Talk. And we thank you for the work you are doing to promote great relations between the Jewish people and Christians. Now, what first drew you to the importance of interfaith dialogue?
Well, first, thanks for having me on. It's great to be with y'all. Growing up in Alabama, how could you not be involved and interested in interfaith dialogue? I guess that would be the short answer. So many times I've been in situations where I was the only Jew that someone had met. And of course, there were questions and more questions. I did a youth leadership program. I was the only Jewish representative. I did a summer program before my senior year of high school at a local college, the only Jew in the place. And in fact, when I remember moving in to the dorm, and one of the guys ran down the hall to tell his roommate, and I heard him exclaim, "Hey, this is neat. We've got a Jew on our floor." So, um, with all the questions and so forth, there were often ones that I couldn't really answer because I didn't understand where they were coming from because I wasn't as familiar with Christian theology and certain concepts in Christianity. So when they would ask me certain things, it was out of my range of experience. So I would do an answer, and it wouldn't really answer what they were asking me. So over the years, I gradually learned both languages, as it were, and it's been great because there's just so much interest in the Jewish community among Christians, and especially in this region, the Bible Belt, where Christians take their faith seriously, take the Bible seriously, and over the years, there's been such an increase in pro-Israel activism in the Christian community, and just interest in Jewish people and the Jewish history in general, especially the recovering the Jewishness of Jesus and his original followers. So we get asked a lot of questions, and it's great being able to explain these things and to talk about these things because after centuries of persecution, it's quite a change, and a very welcome change, I'll say. It's a lot easier to hate an abstract, but it's more difficult if you know somebody. But that's also one of the pitfalls in this region is there are so few Jews and so many Christians who are interested in learning more. So that's been kind of an issue, and hopefully the magazine will help overcome that.
I love that. And I am in total agreement. I think education is the important thing. Take the mystery out of it. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to educate people about anti-Semitism, about the Holocaust. And I just finished my doctoral project that looked at the history of anti-Semitism, Larry. And it's
Mhm.
it's it's unbelievable. I actually did not know some of the things that happen in events like the Crusades and the Spanish Inquisition,
Oh
and
yeah.
it goes all the way back to Egyptian slavery. And
Hmm.
so I was so depressed after I went through it, and I just think it's important. This education is important to turn that around. Now, I know I met you at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, and when I heard about your work, I just loved it. And I am curious as to what kinds of stories you include in Israel Insight magazine.
Over the years, going around the South and covering things for the Jewish magazine, I would run into so many different stories about Christian supporters of Israel. And this is something that I was familiar with, unlike a lot of my colleagues around the country. And there are so many Christian supporters of Israel out there, and so many groups doing amazing things that no one's ever heard of. And it's not noticed, it's not publicized. And also, the Jewish community isn't aware of this sort of thing going on either, and the motivations behind it. So we decided that a magazine like this would be a great way to spread these amazing, uplifting stories, and also hopefully be a vehicle to bring the communities closer together and dispel a lot of the myths and a lot of the historical skepticism and hesitancy that we've seen in Jewish Christian relations. I mean, there's all sorts of groups doing amazing things. You've got Hayovel out of the Midwest bringing volunteers to Israel all the time to help with agriculture. You've got, I mean, even little initiatives. We did a story about a group of quilters down at Auburn. Shout out to Auburn there,
All right.
who had a bunch of extra fabric that they needed a project, and they decided they wanted to do a bunch of quilts for Israeli military families. And they did a slew of quilts, and with the help of Bruce Pearl, got them over there. And Ambassador David Friedman presented them to families of soldiers who had just come back in a ceremony in Jerusalem. Yeah, little things like that. Other things, here in Birmingham, there's a group that years ago developed a national leadership center in Ariel, a Christian group, and it's become a huge part of the territories in Samaria, and they've broadened that. Now before October 7th, they were doing economic initiatives between Israeli business people and Palestinian business people, doing an end around the Palestinian Authority to try to do facts on the ground, bring groups together to do economic things to hopefully pave the path for peace. And also, this group, this small Christian group in Birmingham, back in 2011 or so, we just did a story on this. Through one of the trips that they sponsor for higher level Congress people, they were able to get Iron Dome declassified and long enough for these congressional representatives to see it. They saw it, were amazed, came back to the U.S., tripled the funding for it. And now another thing that this group is doing is something called friendshoring. When COVID hit, and we realized, oh my goodness, all of our pharmaceuticals are coming from China. This is a problem, a big problem. So they came up with this initiative to establish an FDA office in the Middle East, and I believe it passed one of the houses already. So what that will do, the idea is to shift a lot of pharmaceutical manufacturing to the Abraham Accords countries, strengthen that partnership among Israel and her neighbors, hopefully get some additional countries involved, and use funding from UAE, ingenuity from Israel. They need jobs in Egypt and Jordan and other areas. So have a lot of these pharmaceuticals manufactured over there. Now, of course, we say, well, why not have it manufactured here in the US? Prohibitive costs and so forth. It's a lot easier to do it overseas. But here, at least, we won't be dependent on China, which is not exactly got the U.S. best interest at heart. I'll put it that way.
That's for
So,
sure.
so this is stuff that the Christian group in Alabama is doing, and who's heard of this? These are amazing stories. They've got to be out there.
Well, that's what's so great about your magazine is you're finding all these and that's going to let more and more people know. So I am fascinated, and I also love that your magazine covers, of course, southern states. I am actually from Atlanta, Georgia, third generation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another state we want you to get into your circulation. Now, from your perspective, Larry, how open is the population of these southern states to interfaith dialogue, and how do you promote that through your publications?
Okay. Yeah, I think that especially around the South, everyone's open to it. Everyone lives next to each other. So, yeah, we already have relations with everyone, but in terms of, actually sitting down and discussing this sort of thing, um, there's been an openness. I mentioned that I've been involved in a dialogue group since high school. Down in Mobile, Alabama, there's the Mobile Jewish Christian Dialogue that started in the early 1970s. I think it's the longest running such group in the country. Uh, but historically, these dialogues have been more with churches in the moderate to left category, um, because these are ones that a lot of Jewish communities have been aligned with on social issues. Um, and it's been much less with evangelical churches. And that's partly because of the historical skepticism, hesitancy, because of issues, with, are they just trying to get in the door to convert us? That type of thing. And also on the political spectrum, I mean, the Jewish community, when it comes to church state issues, we haven't exactly been on the same page with the evangelical community. Things like, Ten Commandments in the classrooms, like they're doing in Louisiana right now, or abortion, or things like that. So we haven't been natural partners on that because we've been on different sides of the spectrum there. So there hasn't been as much dialogue there. Although I have found that it is extremely valuable to be talking about, once we become friends and everything, we can talk about things like this, and why we have the different perspectives. And, while we're not going to change each other's minds, at least understand where the other side is coming from. Because especially in our politics today, there's so much demonization that if you're on the other side of these issues, then, you know, insert epithet, insert insult. That, but it's a, but there's a lot more common ground even on the controversial issues, and we can talk about things like that. Um, and also, so the way we also do it with the magazine is that by highlighting, especially the partnership and the change that has taken place in the Christian world, in attitudes toward the Jewish community over the last several decades. Um, it's showing people in the Jewish community that yes, it's not like it was in 1950. Things have changed. We can talk. We can work together. We don't have to. I mean, we're never going to totally let our guard down. That's just part of 3,000 years of having to deal with this stuff. But we can at least work with each other.
I agree so much, Larry. Our neighbors were Jewish 2 doors down. We were best of friends, and we would celebrate Seders with them and go to their boys' bar mitzvahs, and then they would come over and help us decorate the Christmas tree. I mean, that was just a neighborhood, like in our own little cul-de-sac. Interfaith Dialogue had a best friend who was Jewish, or is Jewish, still Jewish, and traditional Jewish. And so I just think it's so important to have these conversations, and we would have conversations.
Hmm.
But the other thing is, I think this needs to be taking place in the colleges and the schools. I don't know how this is going to happen, but I just think that would help diffuse some of what is going on right now. And there is a lot of division across the country over what happened on October 7th. Now, even
Hmm.
though I have my viewpoint on this, even though Hamas invaded Israel and brutally murdered, we don't know the half of it, brutally murdered men, women, and babies, there are people accusing Israel of genocide. How
Hmm.
do you think people are looking at this war in the southern region where you live and work?
Around the South, because there's such strong support for Israel, we really haven't had that much of an issue with that. Of course, yeah, yeah. No community is monolithic. There are certainly we've had some demonstrations here in Birmingham that I've been to, which were interesting. Great way to spend an afternoon. But when they've had the anti-Israel demonstrations at, say, the University of Alabama or at Ole Miss, the the people on the other side, on the pro-Israel side, have been out there in force with vastly greater numbers, mostly non-Jewish, and it hasn't been a problem really. Um, I mean, there was a there was a strange bit of video from one of the ones at Alabama last year where both sides were chanting the exact same thing at the exact same time, and I won't say what it is here, but it was a rather unflattering comment about Joe Biden. Uh, yeah, so around here, because there's such strong support, and also the governmental support. I mean, Alabama was the first state to call for the establishment of Israel back in 1943. Called for, yeah, the first state to declare Jerusalem as the eternal, undivided capital of Israel. So we get a lot of support, from the state government as well. A lot of moral support. Um, so this is a very pro-Israel region because of the strong evangelical presence, in addition to the historical ties. The only pushback that I would see around here is if you have some of the fiscal hawks who don't like foreign aid in general, and why are we sending all this money over there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, right now, all the aid that goes to Israel from the U.S. is military aid, and it's basically a gift certificate to be spent in the United States and only in the United States. So it's supporting jobs here in Alabama and Mississippi and Arkansas. The Iron Dome components, I think, are built in 25 different states. Um, and also, you've had people at the Pentagon say, look, if it weren't for Israel, we'd have to have an aircraft carrier stationed over there. Israel's basically a permanent aircraft carrier that doesn't cost us the $15 billion a year that we would have to spend if Israel weren't there. So you've got that counter argument too. And also the F-35 planes that were developed here that Israel used to go respond to Iranian missile attacks this year. I mean, the way they performed, you couldn't have asked for a better demonstration for anyone else who's looking to buy those things.
Wow.
It
Oh
was a
my.
great advertisement for the effectiveness, and Israel, in using them during these operations, figured out, okay, how can we make these better? And a lot of advancements in American military material comes from Israel actually having to use this stuff in wartime. So that can only benefit the U.S. down the road.
That's amazing information, which I did not know. Well, I
Mhm.
want to share with you and the audience that Lisa has been creating award winning documentaries, which I just love them, to
Mhm.
fight anti Semitism in an effort to educate Christians. And we know that you have a book coming out called Where Do You Keep the Animals? What Christians Don't Realize They Don't Know About Jews and Judaism. What a title! Can you share some of the things you teach Christians about Jews and Judaism in this book and why the title?
So the title is a rather amusing thing. I'm still writing the book, so hopefully it'll be out towards spring of this coming year. I really want to get it out fairly soon because there is a need for it. So where do you keep the animals? I used to do tours of our synagogue here. On Friday nights when we'd have church groups come to our service, and then afterwards we'd have a question and answer with the rabbi. Sometimes the rabbi would be having to do other stuff. So, even when I was in high school, he would let me do the question and answer. And that was a lot of fun. I loved that. Um, but once I was doing a tour, not during a service or anything, and the leader of the group kind of leaned over to me and said, yeah, I know we didn't ask about this beforehand. Do you think that there's any way while we're here that we could see where you keep the animals? And I knew exactly what he was saying, but I played along and I said, I'm sorry, the sixth graders aren't here tonight. Now, I taught sixth grade Sunday school at the time, so I felt totally justified in saying that. But I knew he was asking about the sacrifices. Well, we haven't done that stuff since the year 70,
That's right.
and it's only done in Jerusalem. So, but I found over the years that, there, as we say, there are a lot of Christians who say they love the Jewish people, and but they don't know any of us to ask us things, and they say, okay, well, to learn about who the Jews are, okay, let's look at the Bible. Well, I mean, we've changed a bit since those times, as reflected in the working title of the book. So, I do a lot of the basic stuff about what we do, the cycle of the calendar, why it's this way. Why does Hanukkah move all over the place. This year it starts the night of December 25th. So why is it so late? It was Thanksgiving a couple years back. Um, why is it? Yeah, and also sometimes I will tie it into to a Christian thing as well because why does Easter move around? Well, it's tied to the full moon, kind of like Passover. Yeah, but it's not the same month as Passover every year. Why is that? Well, it's because the early church you know, didn't want to have to go to those Jews who rejected Jesus. Why do we have to go to them to find out when our holiday is? So they decided to, fix a certain date. So the first full moon after that date. So, that's why sometimes it's not the same as Passover. So, so little things to tie in where the two faiths have had interactions, as it were. But so we'll have some of the basic info. So also, like if you go into a synagogue, you'll know what's going on during a service, um, and you'll know the life cycle events and why we do things certain ways. And there'll be some explanation of some of the trickier things, anti-Semitism, some of the history. It'll also talk about some of the misconceptions, and a lot of people, and in the Jewish community as well, think that the difference between Judaism and Christianity is simply yeah, is he or isn't he? And there's a whole lot more to it than that. There's the approach to the nature of sin and forgiveness, the afterlife, how we read scripture, the concept of oral law, and on and on and on. So there's a lot of different areas. It doesn't mean that we can't work together and we can't talk about our commonalities because Christianity is the daughter religion of Judaism, and we have that very close relationship. But it does neither of us a service to just gloss over our differences. We should understand them and not be threatened by them, and be able to work together, you know, as friends, as neighbors, because we do that when you mentioned Auburn. I'm an Alabama fan. We can still be friends.
That's right. That's right, Larry. And I think you're the perfect person to write this book. And when it does come out, we have a Facebook page called A Bridge of Love, and we'd love to help promote it for you and get some
Mhm.
people in Texas to read it. And so I think everybody should
Absolutely.
read it. And you're the perfect person, as I said, because you've won many awards for your journalistic work. A number of those awards came from the American Jewish Press Association. So I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about your other publication, which is called Southern Jewish Life. What all do you cover in that publication?
Mhm. Well, that is hyper focused on the Deep South and the Jewish communities here. We do a lot of historical pieces. We do things about, basically what's going on in the community. Um, it would be kind of the Jewish community's version of, say, the Alabama Baptist newspaper. We used to print at the same place when I first started. Um, so we had a lot of fun interacting there. We also do a lot of historical pieces and also, I mean, this is where a lot of the Christian Zionism articles originally came from. Was me going around to events back when Christians United for Israel first began in '06, and we found out there was an event in Shreveport, the first night to honor Israel that they had in Louisiana. Went and covered that. Same thing with the one in Jackson, Mississippi. So it's a wide range of things. We do things about books that come out about the Southern Jewish community, and just the comings and goings of the community, and these days how the war has been affecting things. We sometimes will get into politics. The city council in New Orleans has been approached numerous times for anti-Israel resolutions, and there's been huge controversies about that. So we deal with that. The anti-Israel demonstrations they had at Tulane last year, we've dealt with that. And also, one of the things that you'd mentioned, you're working on a documentary about Holocaust denial. Uh, we've done things when some of the deniers, David Irving spoke in Alabama many years ago, and one of the highlights of my career was being personally kicked out of the venue by none other than David Irving himself.
Wow. Claim to fame.
Uh-huh.
Well, I have a feeling you're going to say yes, but would you say that Southern Jewish life differs from Jewish life in the northern states? I mean, is there a difference with that?
There is, and there's actually a whole museum in New Orleans dedicated to that, the Museum of the Southern Jewish Experience. And in the North, you've got the big city experience, you've got huge communities. In the South, you have all these small communities where you had the Jewish merchants who wound up there. Yeah, either that's just where they got off the train or, who knows how. And you have all these small communities and trying to forge a Jewish life when there's not that many Jews around you. So, in the North, you can be Jewish by osmosis. It's just around in a place like New York or Philadelphia. Here, you have to work at it. And if you don't do it, it's not going to get done. You're not going to have anything. So there's a lot more involvement and a feeling of responsibility. And, of course, we are Southern. We definitely blend in with our surroundings. Yeah, more leisurely pace. Um, I mean, we had a thing, the congregation in Greenville, Mississippi years ago. They had a student rabbi in, and one of the members took him deer hunting. And they had a picture in their bulletin of him with a deer that he bagged. You're not going to find that in a Northern Jewish synagogue bulletin because, first of all, I mean, we Jews don't really do hunting, but still, that's a Southern thing. That's not going to be up there. And of course, college football is the state religion, um, and barbecue. Of course, in Alabama, barbecue means pork, but in Memphis, they started the kosher barbecue contest. So we adapt to that, and there are kosher
Okay.
barbecue
That's very
contests around the
cool.
region.
Kosher barbecue.
Uh-huh.
Love it. Hey, I mentioned, we only have about a minute, but I mentioned that I met you at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, and that is a group of primarily Christian conservatives. Why do you think it's important for yourself, for you to attend conventions like NRB and report on what's going on there?
Because there's a lot of pro-Israel activity there, and we need to have a presence there as well. Uh, and we need to understand each other. And also, I found that while a lot of people in the Jewish community might hesitate to surround themselves in that atmosphere, it was actually very welcoming. It was not at all threatening. I mean, I could tell there were some groups there that would love for to evangelize me, but I just pretty much ignore them, do my thing. But overwhelmingly, it is an incredibly positive experience, and totally felt safe wearing a kippah there. And I don't normally wear one.
Larry, thanks so much
Mhm.
for being on Pop Talk and sharing about your journalism work, especially what you're doing in interfaith dialogue. Now, if you want to subscribe to Larry's email or one of his magazines, you can find Larry at israelinsight.substack.com/ Israel Insight, that's SIGHT substack.com/.
And we would also love for you to contact us here at Pop Talk and Pearls of Promise. You can email us at info@pearlsofpromiseministries.com. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on X at Pop Talk Media or at Pearls of Promise. We are also on Instagram at pop_ministries.
So that is Pop Talk for today. We're just ordinary girls
Who God turned into pearls. Have a wonderful week.